survey. If everyone has seen this survey, if you could please do that survey for me. They always check to see how many people have done this survey. So that'd be great if you guys could get that done. Is there anyone that does not know where it is or has not had a chance to do it? Give you guys a few minutes to get that done. Please, 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 if you could do that, that'd be great. Right. Today is going to be an interesting day. I always like today because we're going to switch gears just a little bit in chapter 14, and we're going to talk about actually being in the workplace, right? So we're just going to take a little stroll into imaginary land, and we're going to pretend like we already have a job and we're working. And chapter 14 just talks about what that looks like and giving you some, I guess, just some thoughts on what your work environment will be. It's nothing that many of us don't already know if you've had a job before, but when you're working in a profession or you're working, eventually as a supervisor or a manager, these are some of the things that you'll want to just pay attention to, right? So most of us, we're all professionals, but when you secure a professional degree, people term you a professional, right? So when someone says, oh, that's a professional this or a professional that, that means that they have some type of higher education that, quote unquote, should make them an expert in the field, right? When you go to an accountant, you expect two things, right? You expect, number one, that they probably have some type of degree in that subject matter. And number two, that they are a subject matter expert, right? You don't go to people and pay your money if they're not knowledgeable, right? So that is the same with you. When people come to you in HVAC, welding, electrical, veterinary assisting world, they assume you are a professional. They presume that you are a subject matter expert at your level and that you will behave as such. So when we talk about professionalism, what is it essentially? It is that soft skill that we learned in week 1. It does include, your behavior, your character, your judgment, right? People expect you to be a professional, your workplace skills, and your really big emphasis on your self-management skills. We talked a lot about workplace skills. We know what those are, right? We know that they are both the skills that your employer expects you to have and some of your other soft skills. When we talk about self-management skills, in addition to the typical soft skills like time management and being flexible and good team player, the self-management has more so to do with your personal regulation, your self-regulation. You may have heard the term emotional intelligence. That word refers specifically to someone that has the ability to self-regulate. I know this may sound, somewhat juvenile because when we think about emotional regulation, most times we think of like smaller children, right? But emotional regulation is a sophisticated topic and it most definitely, is relevant to adults because if you think about it, adults deal with a lot of pressure, right? What are we dealing with? We're dealing with personal pressure, whether it's yourself, maybe you have an illness, maybe you have some financial situation going on, maybe it's a family member, maybe you have children. You're also dealing with the job. You're also dealing with maybe school. There's so many different things we have to deal with. So of course, there's going to be a lot of emotional triggers that happens in your adult life. That is, to be expected. Emotional regulation has everything to do with how do you manage your own personal emotions because at the end of the day, many of us spend most of our time at work or a large portion of our time at work. And guess what? You carry your life with you, right? You don't get to hang up your life like a coat at the door of your job and then put it back on once you leave. You carry all of that weight with you in the workplace, right? Just like you carry it at school, you carry it your work at home. We carry our stuff, right? We don't ever get to put it down. So what emotional regulation is all about is knowing yourself well enough to know what your triggers are, right? So in addition to some of these soft skills that fall under self-management, like being on time, like I said, being dependable, and time management, a big one is emotional regulation. So we know that we can't be late. We know that. Most of us know that, right? Now, we may not have ever thought about it as self-management, but if you think about it, I think we all know someone, if we're not that person, that's always late. Anybody ever know somebody that's always late? Just, I don't know if they do it on purpose, if they just have some type of, we know somebody, right? Or I mean, I don't know what it is, but they're always late. For me, I am ex-military, so we were trained not not to be late, right? It's always be on time, be on time, be on time. So I am a stickler for trying to be on time, right? Because I'm just conditioned that way, but some people are wired differently. I I feel like a lot of it has to do with some type of procrastination or something in that person's psyche that makes them, delayed. I think it is. I think it has to be something, right? But being dependable, a person that is reliable and trustworthy, doing what needs to be done, keeping your word, right? Carrying your fair share. Now, I'm going to say this to you because this is something I am currently struggling with. I am an introvert. Any introverts? Anybody else is an introvert? I am such an introvert to the point where when someone asks me, Kara, I don't know if it, but let me know if you have the same issue. When Amy too, when someone asks me to go somewhere, like it is a big ordeal. It is an ordeal. Even if I have to get something fixed at my home and someone has to come do it, it is a big deal for me. Now I'm thinking about, oh my God, now I got to be available. It gives me anxiety. I don't know what it is. I just don't like you took care. Okay, I'm not alone. So at my daughter's school, there's this little girl. I mean, she's not a little girl, she's a big girl, that her mom has been telling me that her daughter wants my daughter to come to her birthday party. Like, I don't especially school. And this particular student is not even in her class, but my daughter is so friendly. She talks to everybody, so everybody loves her. So now this kid wants her to go to her birthday, but this is really a big girl. She's like almost a young adult. And my daughter's only 12, so it was already kind of awkward, but she's like, my daughter wants your daughter to go to her birthday party. So this lady's been telling me this for like a month, right? I have had so much anxiety because I don't want to go, but I have to go, right? I have to go. My daughter doesn't really care one way or the other, but it's more about keeping my word, right? So I have to go, right? Even though I don't want to go because it's strangers and I don't like strangers, and my anxiety is through the roof. Can you guys believe it? I mean, this is a real thing, people. For those of us, I want you extroverts to understand what us introverts go through. We do not like going to places, especially when it's parties. I can deal with small groups, one or two people, I'm fine. I hate parties and I hate people being around people I don't know. But I'm going to suck it up and go because it's not about me, right? It's about that her daughter, she's a child and she wants my daughter there. So I am going to go. I am going to keep my word and go. Even though I know this lady would be mortified if she knew that I am such an introvert and I don't want to go. But sometimes it's just about keeping your word, right? So that is so important. And it's not an easy feat. And I use that because I'm sure Amy and Kara can tell them, ladies, us introverts, it takes a lot for us to do stuff that we don't want to do. So just know, extroverts, y'all don't have a problem talking to people all the time. But We do, but I still got to do it, right? So when it comes to time management, that's another thing, being on time, doing your work assignments, working harder, not smarter. This is another thing that I struggle with, that you just have to make sure that you do. And I know it's me, the same way I know my introvert, you know, personality is me, it's not them. I know that about me. Same thing with time management. I'm a consultant and I consult with people and to do business. And I have a client that is driving me nuts because I am a proactive person. I do not like being reactive. What does that mean? That means that when you give me something out of the blue that I did not expect, my anxiety kicks in. It gives me so much anxiety. I don't like people saying, "Oh, hey, could you do this? It's due by Wednesday. I just really need you to help me do it real quick." That gives me anxiety. I don't like it. Right? I did not expect it. I'm the type of person, I like to know what is on my plate. I like to plan things out. I like to be proactive. It gives because I'm very analytical. It has nothing to do with, and I think some people may think that, oh, it's because, you're scared or something. No, it's not because a person is scared. Proactive people like, thank you, Alyssa. Proactive people like to plan. I'm a visual learner. So if you give me something, I want to be able to digest it. I want to be able to visually attack it in my head. I need to be able to logistically think through how I'm going to handle it. I actually set a plan and then I work my plan. I'm a very efficient person. If you give me something out of the blue, then I don't have time to process. And that is what gives me anxiety. I know myself. So I actually have to tell my clients. As a matter of fact, I'm telling you guys this because I'm probably going to have to get rid of a client. That's one thing that the good thing about business, guys. I know with this economic climate, they're like, keep everything. But I know myself enough to know if I'm working with a client and they're very impromptu, very reactive type people because that's their personality, then I'm not going to work well with that client because I'm very proactive. I'm the type of person, tell me what you need, give me 2 weeks, let's sit down, talk about what we're going to do, let me go do it, and then I'm going to give you the finished product. I don't like being reactive. This client I just acquired is very reactive and I'm already like, this is not going to work. So I'm already know I'm going to I already know that I'm going to tell them we can't work together. Anyone that knows me professionally, they always laugh because they're like, Cynthia, she always thinks through breaking up with you before she breaks up with you. That is me. And I already know I'm going to break up with them, even though I haven't said it out loud yet because I'm processing the breakup. But that is me. I know myself. You have to know yourself. You can't, because what will happen? You will put yourself in a position, you'll take a job, you'll do something and it doesn't work with who you are. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with the company. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with the position. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It just means you're not in alignment. It's very important for when you start your career, guys. It's very, very important. You have to know who you are as a person. So when we get to emotional regulation, you see it says that right below. What does it say? It says learning how to control your emotions. It does not say learning how to control somebody else's, right? Anybody ever work with somebody that doesn't know how to control their emotions? I'm sure we'll have all the hands go up. And they don't even know it's them, right? They just think it's you. They think it's the situation. They'll say, because you guys did this and because you guys did that. No, ma'am, no, sir. Nuh-uh. You're a big girl, you're a big boy. You need to learn how to control your emotions. You need to recognize that maybe the situation is triggering for you, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Now, are there situations where maybe you have a team and they're not performing well? Yeah, but guess what? In business, they say it still starts at the top, right? If you were a coach and you had a team, your team kept losing, who are they going to blame? The quarterback? They're going to fire the coaches, right? Is that not the truth? So, at the end of the day, you're still in charge, so, it's not just about, yeah, your team may be not performing, but you got to figure out what the issue is, does it have something to do with you? Does it have something to do with the dynamics of the team? Or if you are a team member, and like I said, let me tell you something. I know right now, I do not like working on a team. Why do you think I'm teaching? I do not like working on the team. Even when we have team meetings, I'm like, oh, here we go. Why is that? Is it because, oh, Cynthia, she's just not a team player? No, it's not that, Amy. Thank you for the hand clap. It's because it's the dynamic. See, I understand me enough to know myself. I know enough to know I am a person that has to critically think through everything. So if I got 5 people on my team, that's 5 other brains that are going to process information differently, right? And so now I'm thinking, man, we ain't gonna never get out of here. We're never going to get this done. Now, guess what? I know myself well enough to work well on a team. No team member ever knows that about me unless I tell them, because I play it off very well. So what does that mean? I know how to control my emotions, even though I hate it. I know how to be in a team if I have to, right? I know how to be accommodating. I know how to be a good listener because I know myself. Even though internally, I know I don't like it, I still know how to be a good team member. So my other team members, don't tell them, Cynthia hated being on the team, but because they think, oh my gosh, she's so great. I have a very lovely disposition. But I know myself to know, don't force myself to be in those situations. That is what I'm telling you right now. It's one of the reasons why I love to teach. Why? Because there's one teacher in the room. Have you ever seen 2, 3 teachers try to teach something? Can you imagine 3 of us? Y'all have how many teachers? We don't have the same personalities, do we? I know some of you that have ever had to take multiple classes and all the teachers with all their different personalities. Can you imagine them 2 or 3 of them teaching one class? It would be a nightmare, right? Because a lot of people that go into the teaching profession is because a lot of them like the autonomy of being able to just work by themselves. That's another reason why I love finance and I love IT and I love legal. Anything where I can work independently, I love. And that is because I know myself. It's very important for you to know yourself, guys, because it will help you determine, what type of work you want to do. Now, a big topic that chapter 14 discusses is the idea of working with different generations of people. When we talk about diversity, anybody ever heard the phrase diversity in the workplace? I know it's a big issue politically, but I want to talk about it in a different way, way before DEI ever came out. I'm going back 10, 15 years, right? Way before that became a thing. When we talked about diversity in the workplace, anybody ever heard of the salad bowl versus melting pot concept for America? Anybody heard of that? People say, oh, America is a melting pot or America is a salad bowl. Am I dating myself? That's all right. That's all right, you young folks. That's okay. So back in the day, it was always a big thing. Is America a melting pot where everybody come? Thank you, Alyssa. And they just kind of morphs into this American, is that a thing? Or is America like a salad bowl with a lot of different flavor? Let me take a poll. Give me a thumbs up if you think America is a salad bowl. Just you think of a salad, a lot of different vegetables, whatever. We're just this one big salad bowl. Okay. I see 2. Now give me a thumbs up if you think we're a melting pot. Okay, 3. If you think, I don't care where you come from, if you're in America long enough, you're going to become an American. We're all going to kind of end up the same way. If you think America's a melting pot, give me a thumbs up. So let me tell you a quick story. My ex-husband is from Ghana. I used to work in Ghana. I lived in Ghana. I taught college in Ghana, and I did my doctoral dissertation on the Ghana economy. Got married, and my ex-husband was definitely an African, meaning if you've ever anybody from Africa, anybody know anybody from Africa, the entire continent, and you may have noticed this, and this may come in other cultures as well. My ex-husband would never speak above a whisper. He would never speak above a whisper. I used to always say, what you saying? Speak up, I can't hear you. Another thing that they would do was they never gave eye contact, right? Especially if it was someone that's older than them. They didn't look the person in the eye. And I'm like, hey, this is America, man. You got to look people in the eye. Here, you have to speak a little louder. I mean, so I felt so bad because I felt like I was teaching him all bad habits, right? But that was the American way. Like you can't, be so docile in America, because they were really big on respect in Ghana. So when he came to America with us, after we left, Africa and we came back to America, we landed in New York City of all places, right? So that whole docile thing is going to go out the window in New York. I literally watched this man go from being this docile, low-toned, Ghanaian and to a full-fledged American. Like if you saw this person today versus who he was 10 years ago, you would be like, no way, no way. I've witnessed someone go from being an African to an American. I mean, he's a true African American now. But can you imagine? So I've seen it. So, America is it's almost like, and anybody that's ever lived in another country, you understand it, right? It's not something that is subtleties. Anybody from that was born in a different country, it's subtleties, right? And then if you ever go back to your home country, they'd be like, you are different. You are so different. You are not who the person that you left, right? So, to say, I always find it funny how people are so concerned about, us losing our American identity. I'm like, no, listen, once you're in America, you become an American, you become used to things. And your whole your whole mindset changes, right? And I witnessed it with him. I thought it was hilarious because, just watching him change, I'm like, he probably doesn't even realize. I'm like, oh yeah, you definitely American now. I'm sure he still thinks he's African, but anyway. So I actually think it's a little bit of both, for those that also agree with that. Yeah, you have a lot of different people, but I think it would be hard pressed to say that you don't become Americanized. Do we agree with that? Like most people, especially if they're engaged. Now, if you're, happen to just stay within a small community and you never ever branch out of that, maybe. But for most people, they do become Americanized. But believe it or not, the only reason why I bring that up is that is not the major difference. When we think about difference in society, most of us go straight to that, don't we? We go to either being a male or a female, or we go to ethnicity. That's what we think about in terms of diversity. But what we don't think about in terms of diversity as much is age. When you think about diversities, the first thing come to your mind is age? Probably not, right? That's not the first thing that comes to your mind. But guess what? Age is one of the biggest differentiators among anything, well above ethnicity, and in some cases, gender. Age. Can you imagine? Why is that? Because your generation, how you grow up, has a huge impact on you, does it not? Think about your great grandparents or even your grandparents compared to you. Did y'all grow up different? Did you and your great grandma grow up the same? Do you guys have the same sensibilities? Do you have the same wants? Do you look at the world in the same way? Probably not. So imagine you're working at a company and one of your coworkers happens to be 70. Anybody ever worked with someone with a huge generation gap? Anybody ever had a best friend that's way younger or way older than them at work? Work besties? Don't we love them? Don't we love them? I love my work besties. I remember being 20 years old and I had two work besties that stand out. I always have a work bestie at work. I think we all do, right? But both of my work besties, when I was in my 20s, was over 40, almost 50 years old. They were my best work buddies. I didn't know half of the stuff. One was a male and one was a female. I didn't know half the stuff they were talking about. They would tell me so many stuff. They would keep me cracking up because obviously the older you get, the less you care about stuff, right? And we just have a different view on life because we've been there longer, right? And they were the best, my best work buddies ever. And it was that huge generational gap. They taught me a lot. They taught me a lot about patience. When you're younger, you're always so stressed out. You always want to overachieve. And they would teach me how to just calm down and relax. And they always have a funny story or telling me about a time when, and they did something and how they got through it. I love the multi-generational workplace. I love it. I love it. I love it. You know, you may ask yourself the question, okay, so what generation am I in? And how does it apply in the workplace? So we're just going to spend a little bit of time and talk about that. When we talk about that silent generation, guys, you know, these are the people, let's just say it, these are all the people that are still in Congress. Right? These are all our Congress members. But no, seriously, you know, when we talk about the silent generation, these are the people that go between 20 to, 1920 to 1939, right? This is this age group. And this is, they only make up, I mean, at the time of this book, maybe 2% of the population. I would say probably still is relevant, maybe 2% of the population, right? Very traditional people. You know, if you think back, I don't know who's, has the fortune of still having their grandparents around or their great grandparents, right? This is their generation, guys, right? These are the ones that, believe in hard work. And you probably hear them say all the time, just put your head down and work, 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 right? You probably we still hear from Congress if you watch the news, right? And it's because that's the generation that they come from. Right? A lot of this generation, they come from, people just getting out of, what was the last war? The Vietnam War, I think it was. Or not, that wasn't the last war, but during their time, right? We've had other conflicts, but but when they have that mindset of when you come out of war and they came out of a depression, they believe in getting a job, sticking to it, holding your head down, and it'll work out, right? If you've ever had a grandparent, they probably have given you that type of advice. If you've ever worked with an older person in this generation, that's the type of advice that they're going to give you, right? Why is that? Because in your formative years, right? And they say formative years could be anywhere from your early teens all the way up to your mid 20s. That is where your mind sets, right? That is where you're comfortable. Those are the things that even though you continue to live and progress, those formative years have a lot to do with how you think. So what you go through in your formative years has a huge impression on you. I know me and my generation, which we'll get to, the things that we went through has a huge impact on how I am today. So how you work with someone from the silent generation, whether you're their boss or they're your boss, has a lot to do with you understanding where they come from. The baby boom generation, maybe this is probably most of your parents or older siblings between 44 and 64. These guys are very ambitious type of people, right? This generation here, they tend to think a lot. They still have that strong work ethic, right? Their parents come from the silent generation. They value relationships, hardworking, disciplined. They still come out of that. We used to have in the industries, right? The car industries and unions and things of that nature. So they grew up during that era. So they actually believe in, being committed to a company, working there for 30 years, and it all works out. Yeah, we all know that's not the case anymore, but that is how they tend to think. Like if you work really hard, if you're really ambitious, then you too can have the American dream. So if you get feedback from these people in this type of generation, that's the type of feedback they're probably going to give you. Now, my generation, Generation X, I was born between the 60s and the 80s. And it's funny because my generation kind of grew up in between technology. Technology was not in our school system, not for most of us, but it was right when we graduated, like in high school to when we graduated. And so we're, they say that the Generation X, and I'm not saying it just because it's me, kind of has one foot on both sides of the thing. Like we're very level-headed because we get both sides of it. Like we totally get the new generation, but we also get the older generation because we understand the importance of technology. We didn't grow up on it, but we definitely dealt with it in our early professional careers. I remember, see, Kim, give me a thumb. I remember learning the computer in the Army. That's why I learned computers. I mean, I dealt with it a little bit when you went to the library, but when I was in the military, That's why I learned my first computer. That's why I mean, it was like green box. Yeah, if everybody, there's a black screen with green letters and you had to learn code. We didn't know we were learning code in order to engage with this thing. But that's where I learned how to use a computer. And so it went on from there. So again, I appreciate technology because I saw it happening in real time. I was during that MySpace generation all the way up to what we have today, right? So I can appreciate both. So if you work with individuals in this, generation, you're going to notice, and like I said, probably as most of you guys as parents, maybe even some of you now, we still believe in hard work, but we also believe in technology, right? We also believe in being self-sufficient. You'll see a lot of people, you agree, we're all for starting your own business and things of that nature because we understand both sides of it. And so I think that's one of the reasons why Generation X and Generation Y, which are millennials, so if you grow up between 81 and 96, you're very tech savvy. Like you guys probably had it in middle school, high school. You're innovative, you understand, being, self-reliant, Generation Y, these millennials, people tend to give them a bad rap because they were truly the first generation that was all tech, right? They were the ones that they were encouraged to do tech. They were learning tech in school. They were being innovative. They were the ones that were telling us older folks, man, it's the easier way to do that. Let me show how to do it this way. Let me show you how to do it that way. And some of those older folks were like, leave me alone. I want to do it the way I want to do it. So if you work with a Generation Y person, a millennial, they're probably going to be in that mindset. Let me show you an easier way to do it, right? Any millennials in the building? You always having to tell us older folks, let me show you an easier way to do it. And I'm all for it. I love it, right? I see some millennials like, thank God, if I have to show my mom one more time how to change this voicemail. No, I get it. And I'm all for it. Now, I think that you guys, y'all left me a little bit behind because I stopped paying attention on Snapchat. I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, I was 25 years old when I got onto TikTok. Yes, I got onto TikTok this year for the first time because I'm going to tell you something else. At some point, you stop paying attention to this stuff, like some stuff, especially when it's social. Let me say that because I'm in IT. I do the IT stuff, but the social stuff, at some point, we just stop. Like, I think I stopped listening to music in the early 2000s. I don't listen to a lot of new music. I mean, I listen to some of it. But I don't know why your brain shifts. I think on a social level, you tend to stop at a certain point for whatever reason. Maybe it's whatever your comfort zone is. But when I only got on TikTok because they were trying to get rid of it. I'm like, what is the fuss about with this TikTok? And I don't even use it. I don't even know why I'm on there. I don't know the difference between TikTok and Instagram. Maybe I'm sure there's a difference, but whatever. So at some point, the gap will widen, but you have to understand if you are working with a millennial or millennials, if you're working with an older person, y'all have to give us some grace now. Now we don't run to the internet for everything, right? Because we do understand, especially for Generation X, we saw we saw the internet in its infancy, right? I don't know if you know, but the internet used to just be a bunch of actually it started with the military, then it went to universities. It was really just designed for universities to share information. Y'all know that's how the internet started, right? It was not for folks, it wasn't for us, right? It was for academic type people and military people just to share information from their computer system to the other. And then someone got the bright idea, well, hey, we can share information with each other. Then we can also share information with the general public. And that's when institutions created their own websites and allowed you to go to their websites to get information, right? But for those of us, that came from that era of this internet really being about academics, we understood that you have to be very, very careful what site you go to because not all information on the internet is relevant, like if you're not at an official site. So those that grew up on the internet just thinking the internet is like a dictionary or some type of knowledge god that you can just type in something and you're going to get the right answer. No, anybody can build a website. So if you land on the wrong website, you're going to get garbage in, garbage out. And so some newer people don't really understand that. So sometimes when they just type stuff into the internet and they just assume that the internet is giving them the right information and not understanding that it really depends on who programmed that. Even with Google, they have to program and use algorithms to say that if you ask Google a question, that they're going to different websites to extract that information, synthesize it, and then give you an answer. But you have to make sure that they're going to you don't have to make sure. Google has to make sure they're going to the right website. You're just assuming the answer is right. Right? So for those of us that, were back in the day when they first started, we understand that, right? So a lot of times we won't take anything at face value. You have to go and dig and dig and dig and make sure that that information is coming from the right source. And so you as an academic, you should understand that too, right? Don't ever take any answer that you get from the internet as gospel. You always have to look to see where is that information being pulled from, and is it coming from a reputable source? Or else you're just going to go around repeating fake stuff. I got it from the internet. No, you can't do it that way. All right. So Generation Z, poor Generation Z, born after 1996. And I'm only saying that because it's in the news now. If you guys have been seeing what's happening with the Generation Zs and those that are graduating from certain degrees, they're having a difficult time. They're a little bit upset because of what's happening in the economic climate. But these people, like I said, they're all tech. They're all tech. And I remember I taught in middle school a couple of years ago when I first came back from New Jersey. I went from New York to New Jersey, then I came here. And when I first came here, I taught middle school because I just needed something to do. And they all had computers, right? They even had computers in elementary school. I don't know if anybody has kids. Does anybody have kids where they have computers? Because I know in Florida, they give them, they give them some type of laptop or something. So they start right out the gate with the computer, right? So they're all technology, right? They're all about diversity. They're all about being an entrepreneur. So much so, I actually feel now, y'all know, I just made the disclaimer that I'm a Gen X, but I also feel like they're a little bit too entrepreneurial. Is that such a thing? I know, forgive me if not that they're, I love entrepreneurship. I have an MBA in finance. I teach entrepreneurship. But what I am saying is, I think that they're just like all or nothing, entrepreneur or nothing. Like this concept of working for a company is, they're like, get out of here with in some instances, I don't know. But I get it. I'm still new enough to get it. I get it, because if you really think about it, way, way, way back in the day, everybody had their own business, right? It was just all small businesses. This concept of corporations, this is a new thing, right? When I say new, I mean, a couple hundred years old, but we had corporations back in the 1900s. But it's still, actually, if you do the research, small business is still the dominant employer, right? So small business has always been a thing. So I love entrepreneurship. I'm not suggesting that, but the only thing I am saying, I have noticed that it's like an all or nothing with some newer people. And that does bring me some concern, because I do think it's okay, even if you are an entrepreneur or if you have an entrepreneur mindset, to at least work, for someone for a little bit, right? That's why I even tell you guys with your career plans. I've seen some people want to start their own business, become a master electrician, become own their own mobile clinics one day. All that's great, but it's also okay to, work with someone before you do that, right? That's okay as well. All right. So, like I said, multiculturalism to me is one of the biggest diversity, segments in society. To me, I think it's even more, um, critical than any other segment. So this idea of, working with different ages, different people from different backgrounds, that have similar mindsets. I always tease people and I say, what's one thing that we all, right? So we all probably are in generation X, Y, and Z. Is it that? Who's it, X, Y, and Z? No, is that right? Yeah, no, X, Y. Oh yeah, that's funny. X, Y, and Z. Y'all know I just realized it's X, Y, and Z from the alphabet. Okay, never mind. Anyway, what is one thing we're all going to be telling our grandkids one day? We're all going to be telling our grandkids about COVID. Are we not? Especially if they don't wash their hands and they don't understand about germs. We all are going to be telling the COVID story, right? Because that is something that we all went through in our generation. Our grandkids are not going to understand us. They're all going to say we're crazy and that we're overthinking it. And we're all going to be trying to convince them how bad COVID was. I don't know about you, but COVID changed me. I wash my hands so many times a day. I make sure my daughter washes her hands. We don't even eat. You know how back in the day you used to just run to McDonald's and eat the fries? Man, I don't even do that. I don't do anything without washing my hands. It did change me. I'm not going to lie. You know, I saw some people get really ill from it. I actually caught it. My daughter caught it. So it changed my life, you know. So that's something in our generation. And, you know, it's a generational thing. So when you think about mindset and you think about, you know, how life changes your mindset and how you're working with people in different generations, you have to give people grace, right? Because I'm sure whatever generations that come after us, they're all going to be saying we're crazy because COVID couldn't have been that bad. And because we lived it, we're going to know. You understand that? So the same way you would want a younger person from now to give you some grace, you have to learn to do the same thing with different people from different generations, especially in the workplace. So that means you young folks give us some credit when you're talking about being social influencers. And I'm like, what in the world is a social influencer? And why are you doing that? I know people make a lot of money from it, but I just can't get it. But anyway, all right. So here is your conference question for today. And please, I'm going to make my last little disclaimer. Y'all already know what I'm going to say. Tomorrow is the last day to turn in your work. Tomorrow, 11:59, is the last day to turn in your work. The only thing that will be open on Thursday is your final and your final project. Please, my friends, please, please, please. If you owe me something, turn it in before tomorrow at 11:59. Yes, I don't want to have to say no. Y'all know I hate saying no. Don't give me anxiety. Y'all know I get anxiety. Y'all have to tell somebody no. Please, please, and please. Okay. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you doing that for me. All right. Here's your live question. Your live question for today is to find a company in your career that you believe you would like to work for. Right? Find a company in your career. We want you to do that research. Remember, everything is about making sure things are in alignment with your career plan. I want you to give me 3 things about that company, things that it doesn't matter what it is, what you think is important. Maybe you're concerned about what locations they are in. Maybe you're concerned about how big the company is because you want to grow. Maybe you're concerned about that mission statement because, you know, ethics is important to you and you want to make sure this company is, you know, especially if maybe you're in the VA field, you want to make sure this company is not dumping toxic somewhere and messing up the ecosystem for the animals, right? Maybe that may be of concern to you, right? So 3 different things about this company that are in alignment or that may you know make you consider whether you want to work for that company or not. 3 different things. That's what I want you to do for today's conference question. Any questions on that? All right, my friends. All right. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you guys so